Good morning, fellow hat nerds. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Yeah, officially the beginning of Hat Chat number 21, right? Um, wow. I guess we've again, I'm not consuming booze, even though the Hat Chat number 21 makes us kind of legal. Um, again, I'm not opposed to, I have no idea if YouTube has any rules about about consuming alcohol on a live stream. I don't know if I want to test that out and essentially you know, basically just find out the wrong way, right? It's kind of like the whole old adage, F around and find out. I don't think I want to find out from YouTube that I wasn't supposed to do that. But welcome here. I am kind of flabbergasted that we made it all the way to 21. It's one of those things where you're like, oh yeah, I can do this forever. But I know myself very well. That's one of the benefits of making it to this fine age here, just short of 50, is that you kind of know yourself. And I'm like, okay, I know eventually I'm gonna tire out. But in the meantime, while I still have the energy, I'm gonna try to keep these things going daily. It's just one of those things where I just want to make sure I caution. If you guys come in one day and then Luke is not doing hat chat, I hope you guys forgive me. It's just one of those things where I'm a human being just like everybody else. I have finite energy levels. I just happen to be invigorated because I started walking again and the weather's been nice and cool, right? So now that we're kind of easing our way into some more fall weather, the nice thing is that one, these felts that I like to wear every day, they're a lot easier to wear, right? So I'm a prolific sweater. This weather, this cooler weather definitely lends itself better to the to the fall and to the winter, obviously. And I'm just somebody that, like I said, I have one straw hat. It's a cheapo, but it was a very important hat because it was really my first hat that kind of got me into the journey, into the hat journey, right? And I'll show you that hat at some point. Again, this is not about my hats. I use this as a straw man. Really, this is about me hanging out with like-minded individuals, fellow hat nerds of all kinds, right? So, you may hate this hat that I have on now, but hopefully we have a little bit of a kinship in that, that we're both hat nerds, right? We talked with Paul and Morgan yesterday, as well as Ian, but Paul and Morgan just happen to be huge fans, and they're not by themselves. I know that. I hang out on the Fedora Lounge way too much to know that they're the only ones, the only fans of that high crown. But it's one of those things where I haven't got there yet in my hat journey. Doesn't mean I won't, right? So just like the straw hats, I don't have it, but doesn't mean I won't. So the Panamas, that might be something that happens, sometime down the road. I'll get myself a proper Panama hat, right? A straw hat. Same thing with boaters, right? I don't own a boater hat, but I will, I think, only because I love them. I love looking at them so much. I know that at some point I'm going to need to own one. And the same with the top hat, right? Even though the top hat is kind of like the anti-Luke, right? Luke is kind of like the very casual dress. But I respect the hat, the history of the top hat so much that, who knows, maybe that'll be kind of a hat that I own, but I don't wear. But I don't know. I'm just so inclined to wear my hats that you might just see me come on here with my casual guayabera and all, and just rocking a fine top hat. And I can join the topper community. I mean, there's no wrong way to do this, right? That's kind of the main message that I've been trying to propagate here, since I started, I think. And like I said, if you don't appreciate the low crown or the stingy brim, that's okay, as long as you can at least appreciate that we are just different. We have different expressions of this love for hats. There's room for us, right? It's one of those things where, like, we talked about the rocker style. And again, I'm gonna say this until we get an expert on here on that rocker style, or I don't know what else I can call it, but it's that gentleman, Brian Forbes, who I hopefully, maybe I'll get Brian on here one day. I reached out to Brad Bowers, the Had It Professor. I sent him a friend request. He may not accept. I don't blame him. Brad, if you watch this, accept my friend request, and then hopefully after you accept my friend request on Facebook, maybe you'll accept my request to come on here and just share a little bit of your knowledge, because like I said, somebody like Brad Bowers, aka the Had It Professor, those kind of folks, they forgot more than Luke will ever know and could ever show you, right? Even though, again, there's a benefit from me and my hat journey. I actually spoke to a gentleman called Sam today on Fedora Lounge to invite him on the show. Sam said he's too new. I completely respect that. Sam, if you're watching this, like I said, I bring folks of all of it. And again, I'm far from like a seasoned hat nerd. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none type of guy. And even if I feel like I'm kind of approaching like a mastery, I'm just not the type of guy that tries to like say that he's a master. You know what I mean? Hopefully that makes sense. It's just one of those things, just the way I approach myself, because the more I get along in my life journey, besides my hat journey, my life journey, I just realize how much I really do love learning in all ways that I'm able to learn, right? I'm more somebody that likes YouTube a lot, right? That's why this platform is no accident. YouTube, I owe a lot of the knowledge that I've gained in a variety of ways, in a variety of topics to a lot of the folks that we have on YouTube. So I'm honored to kind of be part of that movement. Again, regardless of what kind of YouTuber you are, I kind of respect it because, like I said, I met Kevin via YouTube. I found Kevin Gerber, who I very much consider a mentor in all of this, I consider him a mentor. I consider him a legitimate hatter, and he's definitely an influencer. Again, regardless of how Kevin thinks of himself, he is. And same with Paul. Paul, who we had on here yesterday, and we'll have Paul back on. So hopefully the folks, the small number of folks that we had rocking with this channel up until this point, enjoy that. I besides my board of directors, right? So Paul, Morgan, and Ian, we kind of have a little face group chat going, and I called it the Good Luke's Board of Directors. And it's not like anything like fancy. I don't think of myself as like some kind of like big channel. But I am somebody that really respects like core audiences, right? And if you watch my show here regularly, then I'm touched by that, and I want to do something to kind of respect and those regulars, because I made the analogy to Cheers, right? Again, I don't know how many folks grew up watching Cheers. I did. I still watch Cheers. I watch reruns of them because the main core concept behind Cheers, right? Cheers is a sitcom that was based in a pub in Boston, right? So shout out to Boston, shout out to Cheers and the entire cast. I think we just lost George Wendt, who played Norm, iconic character on Cheers. But that show, the main concept behind that show was and this theme song says it all, right? You want to go where everybody knows your name, right? And then finishing that, and they're always glad you came, right? So I think that is something where, like, you guys already know by now if you've seen my episodes before. I'm a researcher by trade. I studied organizational behavior, and so that concept of authenticity and the concepts of inclusivity and how you get folks that are employees to buy in to the company culture, right? How do you create a company culture that's very strong and people identify with it, right? And that permeates with every organization you think of, right? We talked a lot about organized crime. We talked a lot about gangs, right? And like growing up with gangs and crews. I'm a Brooklyn boy. Something that I grew up seeing. I wasn't part of, but I grew up seeing around me. And thank goodness I managed to stay away from that. I mean, who knows? I might have not been here if that wasn't the case. But I view all of that stuff. I view the gangster movies, like The Godfather. I view that from the lens of organizational behavior, and it's an organization. Like I said, gangs and like the organized crime, like the mafia, and and all that. It's an organization, just like Coca-Cola and Amazon and whatever other organization you might think of as your exemplar, right? But the main difference is that when you screw up in that kind of life, right, you don't get a pink slip, right? You get a pink slip, but you get an ultimate pink slip, and it's kind of like usually you pay with your life. Again, I'm not trying to glamorize that life. It's just something that I just view as a research nerd. And again, I do follow other like former members of that life. I follow Sammy the Bull on YouTube. Sammy the Bull Gravano, who was with the Gambinos. He was with the Colombos before the Gambinos. I also follow Michael Francesi, who was the son of Sonny Francesi, and they both were captains in the Colombo family in New York. Shout out to Michael. Michael is a born-again Christian, as is Sammy the Bull now. I believe it was through his tie with Michael, and they're both born-again Christians. Again, regardless of how you view religion, regardless of how you view the authenticity of those gentlemen's choices, right? Some people might believe that, hey, if you go and you murder a bunch of folks, there's no such thing as forgiveness. But I just happen to know that, as somebody that is no stranger to religion, that there is redemption, there is forgiveness. And it's one of actually the most beautiful parts of religion is the concept of forgiveness, right? And that's something that we also study in organizational behavior, is the concept of forgiveness, right? Sometimes you kind of just forgive before you forget somebody sometimes before they even like do you wrong, right? It's such a powerful concept. And it's something that's really understudied, right? Like everybody knows how important forgiveness is, right? It's just every bit as important as a concept like revenge. But I think we romanticize revenge way more than we do forgiveness. And I feel like, I understand revenge, and I know why that's so powerful, right? It's really big. It's really dramatized in that hero that seeks revenge, right? John Wick, right? Everybody, like, I love the movie John Wick, especially the original John Wick movie with Keanu. And I watched the other ones, but the original one is the one that grabbed me. And and you kind of like that vigilante that goes out for justice, right? You watch Death Wish and all those other movies. Revenge as a concept is old as time, but in addition to revenge, right, it goes hand in hand, and sometimes like it's kind of antithesis. But we know is the idea of forgiveness. And right, like the famous Plutarch quote that says, "To err is human, but to forgive is divine." Like that is a powerful message. So if you're out there and you're holding a grudge against a family member, I know all about that. I've experienced that, or a friend. It's never too late, right? They say the greatest distance between two individuals can be pride, right? And I feel like there's a lot of powerful messaging there. Again, I don't mean to get too preachy with you guys. It's just something where I know that because we're all human beings and we're all trying to share the same earth, that we tend to like villainize each other sometimes, and when we should be just embracing each other. So that's, like I said, that's part of the whole idea and the concept of good looks. If that's something that's offensive to you, then you know what, we're just gonna have to agree to disagree. Hopefully I'm not offensive, at least in being like that. Kind of weird actually to it's like a novel concept, right? You offend me with your forgiveness concept, Luke. Sorry. I will apologize for that. But what I will also say is that you're probably not the right place. You know what I mean? If you don't believe in forgiveness and embracing your fellow man, then you're probably not going to be able to rock with me. And that's cool. Maybe there's a John Wick channel out there for people that just want to get revenge and still wear cool hats. Maybe you need to start that channel if this doesn't exist, right? You can just dress up like John Wick, and talk about all the, you know, waste. I'm going to call it a waste of time. I'll be honest. That's my opinion. You waste your time in front of a camera talking about how people did you wrong. But I just think that's not the way you want to spend your time. You know, there's too much good stuff out there to be focused on the negative. You know, and like I said, the media specializes on bad news, right? Like I'm bad newsed out, right? Let's have some good news, right? You know, we have my friend Morgan that was just the other day, like talking to her hatter, right? She wasn't like talking to us because she was on the phone with her hatter, trying to get a figure out what the new bow and the new ribbon that she's going to get on her hat. You know, I'm like, that's the stuff I want to hear, right? That sounds mundane, maybe to the average person, but for the hat nerd, like we want to know about that, right? Paul, you know, the hat maker jumped right on and said, "Oh, tell me more." Like that's really cool. And Ian did the same thing. I'm like, those are the folks that I want to hang out here, even if it's like if I never get another viewer, and I only have Paul, Ian, and Morgan hanging out with me, I'm gonna be just fine. Like I said, I'm cool. This has already been more successful than I could ever hope. So shout out to Morgan, shout out to Ian, shout out to Paul. Thank you for rocking with me, and giving and just sharing a little bit of your day with me. Like I'm touched by that, and you know, it doesn't go unnoticed. So anyhow, like I said, just because I have those guys as my base, it doesn't mean I don't want new hat nerds coming on here. So I welcome it. You know, I really, really appreciate it. Obviously, if you want to, like I said, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to obligate anybody, but I will go and say, if you know somebody that would love this conversation, just hit the share button and just send it to them. Like I said, maybe they're not even a hat person. Maybe they just like to hear kind of a little bit more positive, you know, somebody that's doing what they like. It doesn't matter. Like I said, there's room on this channel for people, for hat nerds, the seasoned hat nerds, right? Like, so like my core in Fedora Lounge, there's people there's room on this channel for people that are just started on their hat journey, right? Like Sam from the Fedora Lounge, Hats by Sam. Shout out to Hats by Sam. Sam, I invited Sam on here because he had a great post that was touching. And I invited him, but he was like, "I'm too new, you know, Luke." And I respect that, right? Because he's kind of paying homage to those folks that really know their stuff. But at the same time, like, we need that, right? Like, so obviously I haven't been doing hats for forever. I got into this in middle age. Everybody gets into the hats at some point in their life journey, and it doesn't always happen, right? So like, I think sometimes there's that that bias that we tend to think that that people have been doing hats forever, right? Nobody's been doing hats forever unless you happen to be in that, like, you grew up in like in a family like Meyer the Hatter, right? Shout out to Meyer the Hatter in Louisiana. Meyer the Hatter is 101 years old, and he now has his kids involved in the business. I believe he has 2 sons that are involved with the business, and they probably do the bulk of the business. But Meyer the Hatter is still doing it, and he's usually in a boater hat. Another reason for me to get a boater hat, because, you know, Meyer the Hatter is 101 years old, right? Who knows, right? Regardless of what you might think, who knows if he's not 101 because he wears a boater, right? Like, I want some of that magic. So shout out to Meyer the Hatter. But like I said, probably Meyer's boys and his family in general grew up with hats because, well, that was Dad's business, right? That's one thing. But even then, like, just because your dad did something, my son is in his mid-20s, and he doesn't wear hats. Like, he wears trucker hats, baseball hats and trucker hats. But so needless to say, when he was growing up, he didn't see me wearing hats because I got into it way after he was already out the house. But it doesn't mean that he won't get into it, right? Maybe my son will come on here at some point, and then he'll be like, "You know what, Dad? You were right. You know, this hat thing is you know, it's fire. That's what it is. That's what the kids. Morgan told me that's what the kids say. So I'm, you know, Morgan is 19, so if Morgan says that what the kids say, then I'm gonna believe her. Maybe my son will come in, man, Dad, that hat stuff is fire. Right? It's like, look at me making things like it used to be. It used to be cool until Luke started saying it, and then now it's like, we better come up with something else. The Gen Z and everybody after Gen Z will be like, we need to come up with something else because Luke already figured us out. So shout out to Gen Z, shout out to Gen X, shout out to my baby boomers, and also shout out to silent generation. Right? We might still have, I believe my dad and my mom are both members of the silent generation. I could be wrong. I believe that's a generation that came right in front of the boomers. Are the parents of the boomers. I believe are the silent generation. I could be wrong, but somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, shout out to all of them. If you're above ground and you've always been into hats, or you're just getting into hats, right? Or you just grew up around hats, right? Maybe you had an uncle, right? I told that story ad nauseum about when I would go and purchase a hat privately, or somebody will see me on the street and just have maybe I'll smile, and maybe they'll like, who you remind me of? You remind me of like my uncle or my granddad, and usually I secretly hope, right? The vain part of Luke hopes that it's really the uncle, right? I just, I'm not actually a granddad yet, and who knows, maybe that'll change in a couple years only. But I'm ready for it because I got all like I got all the qualities. I think of myself as an old soul, but at the same time, like that youthful part of me, like the part that still thinks like I'm 20 or 30. Like that part of me is like, no, I'm not ready. I got time for that, So shout out to my granddads and my great granddads out there, and just my fellow dads, and those that are just sons and daughters. Obviously, if you can't relate to this, then I'm sorry, Hey, Ian, thank you so much. Ian coming in with the win. Again, my base, one of my faithful moderators here. Ian from London says the silent generation is 1928 to 1945. So yes, that would include my parents, who are still alive and kicking. My dad, again, just so FYI, my dad is in his mid 80s, and I bought him his first fine hat. Again, it wasn't anything like ridiculously great. It was just a hat that happened to fit him, that I purchased, right? It was a bowler hat, and it was a wool one, right? So we talked about wool. Like, there's no shame in having a wool hat. It's not like, Oh, and Ian says, and his parents. All right, excellent. Shout out to Ian, and your folks. Basically, my dad saw me come home with hey, the man, Paul. Shout out to Paul. Thank you for joining us, Paul. I was just talking about like the idea of different generations, and how we all come into hats at various points in time. I was sharing the story of my dad, who you guys can see, right? So if you guys are members, yay, my pleasure. Oh man, the pleasure is all mine, Paul. If you guys are members of my channel, even if you're not a member, maybe you were able to see it, but I made 2 posts on my YouTube channel, and the first one was an ode to my granddad, right? I never got to meet my granddad, and we're talking about my dad's dad. So again, my dad's dad and my dad were both born and raised in the island of Puerto Rico, and my dad, like many others, other Puerto Ricans, came over in the late 50s, right? Once the U.S. and the island of Puerto Rico came to an agreement to, in terms of citizenship, right? So you guys know, if you ever seen West Side Story, right? The Jets and the Sharks, right? I believe the Jets were Polish and the Sharks were Puerto Rican. Hopefully I got that right. Right? It's kind of like once you're a Jet all the way. Anyway, shout out to West Side Story. Shout out to Rita Moreno, right? Rita Moreno, who was an actress and played Maria, I believe, in West Side Story. Very, very, like, probably the most famous actress of Puerto Rican descent. actually is one of the I think it's the only Latin actress to win what's called the EGOT or EGOT. Right? That's basically, she won an Emmy, she won a Grammy, she won an Oscar, and she won a what's the T one? If you guys know this, help me out. The thing with the T. It was one of the awards, but it starts with, it's EGOT. The acronym is EGOT. So it's yeah. Paul says, my granddad was a huge influence on me for hats. Check out the About Us section on my website for photos of me and my grandfather in our hats. I will do that. I think I saw that, Paul. I was going to ask you a little bit about that on your website, because I think I can make out like who's who, right? So obviously a lot of the younger folks, the young folk or young person in that photo, I would imagine is Paul. But again, I never like to like assume. I know I have like photos. My mom will send me photos that she's like, oh, this was you when you were 5, and it turns out to be a photo of my son. And I'm kind of a little touched by that. I'm like, oh man, it's like the gift and the curse. I'm like, sorry, son, for better or worse, you look just like me. And like even my mom can't tell the difference, but I can tell the difference because sometimes I get fooled, but I can see like the stuff in the background. And then I'll know, okay, that was not my house growing up. It was, it was the house that my son visited when he would come over. So basically, Paul says, yes, it's me about 3 or 4 years ago in a cowboy hat. You see that? So Paul in the UK had some cowboy in him. Shout out to the cowboys out there in especially in Texas and everywhere. Cowboys, we get a lot of, I mentioned I live in a DC metro area, but you still have a lot of folks, right? Because we're such a transient area. We get folks from all over the US, all over the world. Obviously, sometimes it's job related or just military related, right? So we get a lot of folks that will bring over their cowboy hats. And then, and they will still do it. The nice thing is that I respect it so much because it takes a little bit of like, you guys know, I mean, you don't wear a fine hat of any kind if you're not a little bit courageous, right? Because you're going to stand out. So I really have a lot of respect for those folks that, even if they're not in Texas or wherever they're coming from, where they're probably seeing cowboy hats all over, but they'll come to where they're going, right? So I'll go to Spain, I'll go to Croatia, and I'll still wear a hat. And it's just one of those things where it was like, you got to respect that, right? Because they're courageous. I think it's courageous. Maybe you don't think it's courageous, but I think it's one of those things where, yeah, it's you got to respect it. Ian says, playing Cowboys and Indians was common when I was a Sprog. Wow, I've not heard Sprog before. I think it's Sprog. Yeah, you said Nipper. Is Ian, is Nipper and Sprog like similar? Like I said, I'm not. Please apologize. I apologize for my ignorance, but that's just not a term that I'm familiar with. Nipper, I knew because I've heard the term before and I kind of knew from context. But Sprog, I'm assuming means the same thing. Yeah, Ian's probably typing as we speak. But yeah, it's one of those things where you guys probably know, like you guys have family members that probably like looking at you and like, why are you wearing that hat? Like my family just happens to be very like we're respectful, but we have like a rapport with each other that, and having grown up in the same house where we, my brothers will tell me, like, I actually have a brother, an older brother, Eli, who lives in New Jersey. He's a half brother on my dad's side. And Eli served 2 tours in the Middle East. So shout out to Eli and to his son, Ethan, who's just a fantastic boy. I'm proud that I have a lot of great nephews and nieces. Ethan is one of those special nephews that I'm really glad that I can call myself his uncle. Eli did a great job with him. He's just very respectful and just, again, has an old soul. You can tell. Like when what I mean by an old soul, when you see a kid that seems to have a wisdom beyond his years. Ethan's one of those. And, you know, shout out to Ethan. You may never see this video, but if you do, your uncle Luke says hi and bless you. And you're fine. You're a fine human being. And I can't wait to see what you do. But yeah, Eli is one of those guys that, you know, he grew up very military. And, you know, in my household, like my dad, remember my dad grew up when Kennedy was assassinated in you know, 1960, well, in the early 60s, right? I want to say it was 1960 or 61. Might have been somewhere around that time. But when he was there, my dad was in his 20s, right? His early 20s. So my dad was, you know, by every means, like, you know, this guy from Puerto Rico, new to New Jersey, because he started off in New Jersey. And, you know, he was just he had one of those quaffs, right? And he still does. You know, if you look, my dad, if I'll show you a photo of his, he still has, like, you won't see it in the photo because he has his bowler hat on, but he has a very finely tuned coif. He was known for it when we were growing up. He had the pushback hair and the the prominent mustache. It was like a look that was very popular in the new. I mean, I want to say it was very popular in the, you know, in the 60s and 70s. And like that was before the longer hair, right? My dad never even, like, I don't recall my dad ever having long hair. So I don't think my dad ever went away from the pushback hairdo. And then as he started graying out, he became like a little bit more distinguished looking. But when, you know, when he was in his 20s, because I seen photos, and, you know, I was born when he was already into his 30s. So still young, but again, not in his 20s. And yeah, Kennedy was shot in 1963. Thank you, Ian. Thank you. And apologize for not knowing that. It's not something, you know, I should know that. He was inaugurated in 1960, but it looks like he was shot in 1963. Thank you, Ian. So yeah, basically, my dad was a strapping young man, by all means, very handsome man, still is. But in his heyday, he wouldn't be in a hat because, again, he didn't want to ruin that coif, right, that he had. I don't think he wore any product in his hair, but he very much, my dad, when growing up, he'd be in front of the mirror always, right? There was two things that my dad was going to do. Actually three things. One, he was going to brush his hair back, right? Shout out to my dad. Hopefully I'm not like giving away your trade secrets, you know, maybe he'll be embarrassed, but hopefully he'll know that I paid attention, right? You know, you, again, remember, this is me watching, like, this is the only man that I'm watching as my role model, right? So even though I never went and did I did it for a little bit, but I didn't really have that coif that I wanted, that pushback hairdo. You know, I did have a lot of a family that did do that. Eli is one of them. And Eli actually very much has, like, my dad's look nailed. You know, if you know this, you'll know the look. Anyway, you would see him. The first thing he would do would be brushing his hair back, right? Right. So, like, listen, me watching my dad get ready for his day, right? So, you know, once he's out of the shower, he's in front of the mirror, like, brushing back his hair while he still can. You know, he's got maybe a little moisture on it. Then what my dad would do is that he would, you know, besides putting deodorant on, he would put on his favorite cologne, right? I don't know what it was growing up, but my dad was always a big fan of Polo, like the original Polo in the green bottle. I remember that was around. And then he became a real big fan of Eternity, right? Eternity for Men. So I actually just recently got him a bottle of Polo cologne, like that original bottle, right? The original formula. You know, shout out to my perfume heads out there, my cologne heads, my fragrance heads. We like to call them frag heads, right? I'm kind of like a junior frag head as well. A junior watch nerd, a junior hat nerd, and a junior frag head. You know, I have my own, like, favorite one. I'll share that. You know, right now I'm talking about my dad. I'll be reverent. But my dad would do the pushback hair, put on his deodorant, put on his cologne, get dressed, and then the final thing that he did was he put on his favorite watch, one of his favorite watches, right? Because he had several. But he had a Seiko that he really loved. And he had a collection of watches. And I became kind of a junior watch nerd because my dad was so into watches that, like, for me, watching him, you know, and doing his day to day, like, I didn't think you were really a man unless you wore a watch. Again, it sounds silly, but I can only tell you what I can imagine a young boy's thinking, without having, like, without being able to watch me as an adult, right? Like, you do the metacognition, right? Thinking about your thinking. And you guys probably have similar stories of your dads, right? I mean, hopefully, maybe you guys weren't watching your dad like I was, right? But, you kind of like, who is this guy who's like much bigger than you? Is respected, right? He goes out, people say hi to him, and you're like, as a kid, or you're like, wow, I want people to say hi to me. I mean, everybody, like, I was a chubby fat kid, and everybody's like pinching my cheek and like, you don't want that kind of attention when you're like growing up. At some point, you're like, I want to be like treated like an adult, right? And probably usually sooner than you're supposed to, right? Like maybe now I probably should be super happy. Nobody does this to me anymore. You know what I mean? Like I just don't have, like, I have like a, my face is more like a catcher's mitt. It's kind of beat up. It's a little weathered. But that's okay. You know what? I wear whatever I got. I try to wear it with a smile. Like I said, it's I just think of it as wisdom marks, right? I'm not ugly as much as I am wise. We tell ourselves so many different things. It's like, oh yeah, once you get as wise as I am, you will get all the pontifications and all of the, those great things. It's like, it's really like you got to have a catcher's mitt for a face like me, like Luke. Anyway, shout out to my fellow catcher's mitts out there. You guys know who you are. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with it, right? Like sometimes it's even endearing, right? I think a lot of older folks like me and appreciate my demeanor and my face because I think that, like, I look like them. You know what I mean? Like, I've looked old since I was in high school. I have great stories about that. It's like, it's one of those gifts and a curse when you have like a face like mine. When I was 18 and in high school, people thought I was 30. And that might sound like it'd be cool, but you're just wondering, what am I doing wrong? Am I not taking care of myself? Again, I just had an old face before I was even old. So shout out to my old heads out there in face and in actual years. There's no reason why. Like I said, I think old people are much better than younger people. Again, no offense to Morgan. Morgan's my 19-year-old. Morgan, you don't count because, well, you got an old soul too. Like, I mean, without even having met you in person, I've seen your look. I've seen the way you address people, right, with such respect. Like, Morgan has an old soul. Shout out to Morgan. Hopefully you're having a great day today. Again, respect older people. Like, there's I'm really big on respect culture. Don't think that person hasn't seen a lot, right? Like, if you get to even my age, but if you get to, like, 70, 80, 90, like my parents, like, they seen some stuff, right? Because they had to, right? They seen it because you probably wouldn't be where you're at probably because that older person that's walking your neighborhood, right? If you got an old person out there walking your neighborhood, say hi to them. Don't assume like they don't count because you think that they're not listening, or I think sometimes we think that old people are just like catatonic. They're not. Some of them are, right? We get conditions that will leave us catatonic sometimes, and they probably still know what's going on around them. But if you're out there walking and enjoying the sunshine, they're probably not. They're not senile. They're walking because they're living their life. Paul says, yes, I agree, as I have been sorting out my government pension today for later in this year. Shout out to Paul. Well done. Man, I cannot wait. Now, just FYI, I at some point I will collect a pension as well. It's not something that I happen to work a job that actually, I left that job, but I left after I qualified for a pension, so I won't get as much money as a lot of other folks. But I had to leave there. Like they were the shine, the Luke's shine was getting dulled at that place. But shout out to all those folks that I work with. I work with a lot of great folks. But the nice thing also is that I was able to work there long enough to still get a pension if I lived that long. Like I said, I mean, I could be talking about this great pension and then, tomorrow I'll get hit by a bus, I know that sounds morbid, and I hope it never happens. But every time I go outside, like, I don't even need to go outside, right? Everybody, like a lot of people, there was a really tragic story that happened, recently. It was actually not recently, but it was like a few years ago that always stays with me, of a husband and wife that were working in the house. They were working in different parts of the house, and a tree happened to fall on the house and take and managed to unalive. I'm going to use the term unalive because apparently you're not supposed to use that other word. Unalive the wife, and left the husband a widow. And I thought that was so strange, and it gets me. It's a very sobering thought, only because my mom. Like when I told my mom I'm going to go to Croatia, or I'm going to go to when I'm going to go to Spain, she always tells me, it's like, like, son, don't travel so much. It's like there's a dangerous world out there. And I tell my mom, like, I try to be respectful because I know she just worries about me. But I tell her, Mom, it's a dangerous world here, right? Like something bad could happen to me in the middle of this live stream. I hope I'm gonna knock on wood because I don't even know if this is made of wood, this desk, but yeah, I'll knock on wood because again, not like I'm trying. I have a death wish. I just have less fear now because, well, I'm just short of 50, and I have my ability. I have my two legs. I'm able to walk, and I love walking. I'm glad I'm still able to walk. My dad has trouble walking, and right now, and my dad, all he wants to do is go outside and go for a walk. And he can walk, but he needs a walker, and it's kind of like he lives like he has to go through steps. So like I think of my dad now, and that the fact that he laments that he can't walk like he used to, he can't drive anymore. Like he doesn't have a license anymore, and he's not, even though he keeps wanting to, like when I go over to visit, he wants to like go for a drive. I'm like, I'm sorry, Dad. Like that's when I have to become the dad, right? Everybody knows that. Anybody that has older parents know that when you grow up, right, they raise you. And then once you get to like my age, you're probably the dad, right? And you have to kind of tell them. They become little, like almost like kids, right? They want to do something. You're like, no, 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 right? And you don't do it like to be mean, right? Just like they didn't do it when you were younger. They didn't do it to be mean. They were trying to just basically raise you right. And for me, I'm not trying to raise them. I'm just trying to keep them around, right? It's like I can't imagine, I can't fathom the idea of my parents or my dad. My dad grew up as a taxi driver, right? That was his trade, right? So he very much, his identity is tied to being somebody that gets around. So it's tough to like tell him, hey, you can't do it, because I know it's like telling like an old boxer, right? When an old boxer's like, I still got it, right? I can go out there and I just give me one round, and you're like, no, don't do it. It's like you grew up taking punches. I don't want you out there. So I just treat it like that, and then you're just hoping somebody with good sense is able to keep them from doing it. Paul says, yes, I became a bad dad in stopping them from driving. So so know what you mean. Yeah, it's one of those, like I said, for those folks that are not in that yet, in that phase where me and Paul are. It's just one of the things that you don't count on, right? Like you never think growing up that you're going to have to be in charge of your parents. And you have to kind of like forbid them to do something, right? I know some kids are like, oh, I can't wait, It's like, you never let me have that toy growing up, that piece of plastic, right? That useless piece of plastic for $9.99 in that store that one time. And I can't wait to forbid you, but it's not fun. I mean, I think now, like, I think I can, and Paul, you can let me know if you feel the same way. It's not fun. It's not fun forbidding your parents and being in that role. Like you have to be like the adult, right? You're the adult and you're the one that calls the shots. And it's not just me. I have other siblings, right, that live a lot closer. And they're usually the ones that have to kind of put the foot down, right? It's like, no, you're not driving. You're not even going to go outside unless we know about it. Right? Because again, you just get afraid. You get the same fear they had when you were, when you were the one getting told not to go out to that party, not to go hang out with that kid or that bad influence. again, it's not because they had a great time doing that. It's because they knew better. They knew that if you hung out with Timmy, or whoever that was, and I don't know who it was in your, with little Timmy or whoever, they knew that Timmy was a bad influence, and they didn't want you to see you, they didn't want to see you get in trouble, right? I just have stories of me and my younger brother in particular. Shout out to David. David, my younger brother, who's only like a year and a half younger than me. David was like the social kid, right? I was the fat kid. David was the kid that had all the friends, and never got made fun of because he was just cute and young and lively. I was funny, but I was the funny fat kid. So all my friends I inherited through David. Shout out to David and his family. David's a dad. He's a dad to two boys, my two nephews. And he's like an older dad now, right? So he became a dad in his 40s, as opposed to me. I became a dad in my 20s, in my early 20s at that. And we both had two different life journeys, right? But he's doing well. Shout out to him and his wife and my two nephews. And now I get to be Uncle Luke, like for real. Like I'm really relishing Uncle Luke. And this is one of my Uncle Luke hats. You know what I mean? I talked about this a little bit about in the beginning of like Paul's on here. Paul's a big fan of the High Crown. Morgan, who's like one of my moderators, is a big fan of the High Crown. This is probably like, if you see this hat, my head probably touches somewhere here or close to it. Like this is as low a crown as pretty much you can get. Like if this was any lower, it would be like a skull cap or a ski hat, right? I forget what the term is, but the hat, those knit hats that you wear in the winter that go down to your ears and they go right up to the crown of your head. I used to grow up calling them ski hats. And then I've heard skull caps be another one. Excuse me. And this is a low crown hat, right? Now, you've seen my other low crown hat. Yeah. Oh yeah. I thank you, Ian. I like the color of it as well. I think it's like a greenish color. I don't know how it comes across. It's like a greenish brown. Sometimes it comes across almost like a rum or cognac. I'll show you photos of it. Like I took photos of it and it looks completely different. It depends on the light. I thank you, Ian. I appreciate it. I also like the color. That was one of the reasons I bought the hat, was the color. Paul, our hatter, our token hatter here that we have here, says it looks like about 9 centimeter crown. Yes, a great color. Yeah, it's, again, we talk about always the hooks, right? And the reason I always say that, I mentioned this before, and I'll repeat myself for anybody that's new here. As a collector, right? And I could be the only one that feels this way. As a collector, we get our hats from a variety of sources, right? And I always like, again, I might be weird because I think about these things, and then even weirder because I share them. But you guys are family, right? So you guys can hear good Luke's here talking here. But I always talk about, because when I was a researcher and you were writing a research paper, right? Just like you would write a piece of fiction, you always talk about the hook, right? What is it about the paper that's going to hook the reader? And it's going to keep them reading, right? Like you always have to, and that you want to go off and start off with a really good hook, because again, even though like academics, like to get into the details, they get into the weeds, right? They're known for that. I'm published in academic journals, not a lot, but I've published. Shout out to my researchers out there, my fellow researchers. But when you write a paper, you kind of have to have that hook, because even like everybody has limited time, right? We are living in a time of social media, and even before social media, people had limited attention spans. Even people that like were fans and are nerds of your work, you have to kind of get something that's a hook. And I think of that analogy. I make that very same analogy when I talk about collecting culture, right? Whether you collect hats, whether you collect watches, whether you collect cars, whether you collect Pokemon cards, right? Shout out to my Pokemon card collectors. I'm not one of them. I'm just somebody that's fascinated with like the explosion in Pokemon, like the phenomenon, not the actual Pokemon cards itself. You know, if you guys know, if you watch this and I know you, I know who you are. You know, keep doing what you're doing. I respect it, but from afar, I am not collecting Pokemon cards. Sorry, not sorry. But anyway, I talk about the hooks, and when you go shopping for a hat, right? You might already know what you're looking for, right? So or right, conversely, you might know it like that old adage, I know it when I'll see it, right? I'll know it when I see it. It usually is that, right? So I sometimes I'll browse like Facebook Marketplace, I'll browse eBay, I'll browse Craigslist or whatever have you. Fedora Lounge, all those avenues that you can use to buy your hats. And sometimes you're just like, all right, I could use a new hat, right? Even though you got like Paul mentioned that he had like 60. I don't have 60. I don't even have close to 60. But they're like in the 30 range, So there's no way you need another hat, right? Like you need another hat, like you need that like third Big Mac, right? Nobody needs a third Big Mac, right? Like we do it, like if you get to a third Big Mac, at that point you're not operating on need, Sorry if you happen to I'm thinking back to like when I was a really big, I used to be 300 pounds. And I used to love Big Macs, man. I still do. Like I'm sure if you put a Big Mac in front of me, I'm gonna demolish it. Even though I know it's not good for me. But it's comfort food, right? It's kind of like the same. Whatever you go to that your comfort food, it becomes that thing that like when you're feeling a little down, or like when you really want to party, like when you like have some company, right? We talked about like sharing a pint, right? And I will do that with my fellow hat nerds. I will more than be happy. I'd be more than glad to share a pint with any and all of you. But in addition to that food and that commiseration, there's food. The drink and that commiseration. There's the food that you like to do. It might be fish and chips for my folks in big fan of fish and chips, man. Love fish and chips, and I know that's something that's for my UK folks, fish and chips, and that's core, right? That's like one of the core comfort foods. And man, if I go visit Paul and Ian, hopefully at the same time we can all hang out and get some fish and chips. I don't know if you guys are into it as much as I am, but I love fish and chips. Anyway, now I'm getting hungry. Now you know that Luke is fasting, right? Like I haven't, like if you guys know, I've tuned in just recently. I like to do intermittent fasting, and usually what that means is I'll stop eating sometime around like 8 o'clock at night prior. And then what I'll do is I'll wait to eat I won't eat earlier than noon, my time, right? So Eastern Standard Time, noon or later, right? So what happens is usually when I'm doing this live stream, I'm like approaching that noon time, right? So my brain's already like, oh boy. So you might even see it. I'm like, But the nice thing is it has functional, right? Like that's the nice thing is about that is that usually that'll keep me from streaming for 5 hours and nobody will watch my show. Yeah, love good fish and chips. Yes. Like I said, these are the things that, like it's very few things that you can't bond with when it comes to food, right? Everybody loves food. And then fish and chips is one of those things where yeah, Ian. All right. So it sounds like we got the makings of sharing a pint and some fish and chips. Now I'm gonna leave it up to you guys because if I'm over in your neck of the woods, you guys can take me to where you guys know. And if you guys are in the DC area, right, I will take you to Ford's. Ford's is a little farther away, but Ford's Fish Shack is like one of those places in the greater DC area. I think they have multiple locations, but there's one that's that we go to that has tremendous fish and chips, really great beer and fish and chips that are like, again, it might not be as good as the stuff that you guys have in the UK, but for us here in the States, it does the trick. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like pizza, right? Like even if you have a bad pizza, Steve's like, I'm still eating it, right? I feel like with fish and chips, as long as it's not rotten, right? Like nobody wants to eat rotten food. But a good fish and chips with maybe some tartar sauce, or whatever your dip of choice is. I like the tartar sauce, and obviously some ketchup for my fries. If I or my chips, right? That's where the chips come from. It's not called fries, it's chips. But yeah, regardless, my fried potatoes and my fried fish, and I'm happy as a clam. I'm just sitting there like, I get the fat boy dopamine, the shot, right? My brain is like, oh yes, where have you been? And then you're like, oh yeah, this happens to be $1 million. I'm like, okay, it just so happens that I'm going to give you whatever you ask me. So it's like, I don't care about the price. Like, as long as it's not literally $1 million, I'm going to pay whatever price there is, because I'm going to do this. And usually I'll do it when I'm enjoying company and good company. So I'm going to have a beer, and I'm going to have my fish and chips, and I'm going to be very happy. And everybody's going to know, because those fish and chips they have no shot, right? I'm basically a dishwasher when I go to a restaurant, because I will clean my plate completely. I will do everything but lick the plate, because, I just feel like nobody wants to see that. It's not for lack of want. I tell you that much. You ever have a meal where you're just like, it's so good that you really get tempted? You're like, if there was nobody around, I lick the plate. And mushy peas. All right. Okay, Ian, you're gonna have to help me out here though. Is mushy peas an actual dish? Or is it something that's okay? In the US, I'm just saying, because in the US, mushy peas is like one of those things where, like, how like when you grow up and a lot of kids, their parents would make them eat their peas, and it's always like there's like a little negative connotation here in the US, and I wonder if it's the opposite, right? Maybe you guys in the UK really love peas and mushy peas, right? I happen to love peas, but a lot of kids will say, "Oh, I can't believe my parents. When I grew up, my parents made me eat peas. They made me eat broccoli, and I hate broccoli." I happen to love peas. I happen to love broccoli. It's just one of those things. I can't think of a better thing to have with a piece of steak, or anything, like a good cooked piece of salmon, than some broccoli. So shout out to my vegetable eaters. Yes, peas mashed into a paste. All right. Well then, you know what? I don't know if I've had it. Well, I haven't been to the UK, but if the UK is known for their mushy peas, then that's what I'm going to have, right? So when I make it out to your neck of the woods, Ian and Paul, I'm going to have a pint. I'm going to have, obviously, I'm going to have a pint, but hopefully with you fine gentlemen, I'll have a pint. I'll have some fish and chips, and then I'll have some mushy peas. Hopefully they come with the fish and chips. But if not, I will say garçon, or whatever you refer to. It won't be garçon. Garçon is something else. Maybe that would be France. But whatever it is, a respectful term for our waiter. Maybe it's just waiter. Give me some mushy peas, because my fellow bloke here, Ian or blokes, Ian and Paul here, they put in a good word for the mushy peas, and I'm gonna try it. Paul says my favorite is a pea fitter, smashed peas in a batter like the fish's batter. Wow. Okay, I am learning a lot. Like I said, food knowledge is not wasted on me. Like you're saying, you're speaking my language. And again, if you don't like food, then I don't know if we can get along. You know what I mean? Like maybe we can still get along. Like maybe when I'm fasting, if I'm fasting and you're not a food eater, we could get along. But when my food window opens, watch out. Like, don't you got to be careful reaching into like the bread basket and all that stuff, because I get a little I get a little anxious and a little I don't know, forward, with my hand. And I try to be respectful. I trust me, it's like I'm probably exaggerating a lot. Nobody's gotten their hand bitten by Luke, and if they did, they had it coming. So FYI, like if Luke bit your hand, you had it coming. Like I was defending myself. Anyway, fritters, yes. Okay, so one thing about like Puerto Rican culture, we love fritters. Like there's many things. Like matter of fact, if you guys ever come out here and you guys want to sample some Puerto Rican food, we have a really good restaurant, but it's only open on the weekends. But yeah, really great restaurant that serves some fantastic Puerto Rican food. I don't know if you gentlemen have had a chance to eat sample any Puerto Rican food. Fritters, like you can have a meal just on fritters itself. Ian says, I eat anything, but I have my favorites. Yes, same thing. I happen to be somebody that I grew up very, I lack finickiness. I think the term is finicky. I am not a finicky eater. There are things that I have preference for, but I mentioned this before in my travels. I know that food is very much ingrained with the culture. So when I go out and travel into a new destination, I will take it upon myself, only because, well, I'm somebody that loves food, right? I will take it upon myself to sample what the locals eat, right? Because again, if somebody makes their business out of selling a food, it can't be that bad, right? Like, the worst that could happen is that, okay, that if I had to do it over again, I probably wouldn't choose that. That I've never had a really bad experience, you know. I think honestly, the only real, like, so I'm thinking of my travels, I had some paella that I didn't really care for when I was in Spain, in Barcelona. And I know that sounds funny, like paella is what they do, but maybe I just went to the wrong place. But I happen to have some friends in the family that are from Barcelona, and they're from Spain, they're from Barcelona, and I've sampled their paella, and their paella is so much better. Again, maybe it was because it was good company, you know what I mean? But I think even controlling for the company, I think that their paella. Shout out to Tony and Marina, who live in Florida, and they spend half the time in Florida, half the time in Spain, and wow, their paella is. Thank you for that invite, by the way. Hopefully, I'll come back. Right? Hopefully, I didn't make such a spectacle of myself that they'll have me back for some paella, and some Spanish tortilla. Man, that's like my two favorites. If you ever go to Spain, hopefully you guys have been. I recommend it. I will recommend, instead of Barcelona. No offense to Barcelona. Like I said, I have friends from there, but my favorite is Madrid. For me, there's no better time and place than to be for me than going to Madrid, Spain, in early to mid May, right? Because that's right before the busy season, right? So you're not dealing with crowds like you would in the middle of June. But if you go to Madrid in the middle of May or even earlier, if you could deal with a little bit of a cooler weather, right? So not everybody likes cooler weather. I happen to love it. One, because I'm able to wear a felt hat. But shout out to Spain. Shout out to Madrid. Shout out to Barcelona. I had a great time in Barcelona, but when you have to kind of choose a favorite, I spent time in San Sebastian, which is kind of like the northern part of Spain. Very nice city, very beautiful to look at. But for me, my heart belongs to Madrid. I think the only place that can compete with Madrid in my mind right now is Split, Croatia. Shout out to Split. We had a fantastic time, and like so cheap, like compared to like what you would spend otherwise. Great food, great people, very gracious. And the nice thing about the folks from Split, let's see here. Ian says, I've played in Spain a few times, mainly Madrid. Yeah, Ian, I don't know if you happen to share a love for Madrid like I do. Even if you don't care for it, that's okay. You feel free to speak your mind. But I just find like it's that place that I feel like I'm at home, right? It's like a home away from home. And again, I'm not as well traveled as I plan to be. So I still got to make it to the UK. I still got to travel to Germany. I've been to Sicily, but I still want to make it out and see more of Italy. There's so many places like Peru, Colombia. There's so many great places out there that I want to see eventually. I think at some point I'm going to make it over to Vietnam. A good friend of mine is going to get married, and he's going to have two weddings, one in the US and one in Vietnam. So shout out to you, Danny, and to Christy. Congratulations on your upcoming nuptials. I am touched that you invited me. But I was told that like we really want you in the Vietnam wedding, and I'm like, done. Like we happen to have a friend from Vietnam, and he's been like pushing us to go to Vietnam. So I'm like, you know what? Now I got a reason, right? I got to go attend this wedding for this good buddy of mine, and then I get to see Vietnam, and then I'm sure Thailand will find its way, and Philippines. But like I said, shout out to all my world travelers out there. Like I said, I'm a different person because of my travels. It's probably one of the proudest things, besides becoming a dad, one of my proudest accomplishments, is being able to go out to Europe. It's something that was a long time overdue. I would be lying if I didn't kind of say that I didn't always have the travel bug, and I never didn't always have the uh, the uh, the passion for travel that I currently have. But I do now, and right, I'm still walking. I'm still able to get around. I now am able to go travel in my fine hat. One of my fine hats, right? I usually only bring one, or like maybe I'll change that, right? I might start becoming a 3 hat person. I know they have suitcases. We have a gentleman on the Fedora Lounge that happens to sell those, and maybe what I'll do is I'll bring a case with me on future travel. I try to travel light. That's the problem. Usually what I'll do is I'll bring one guayabera. I'll bring maybe 3 or 4 changes of undershirts and like obviously undergarments, and maybe a couple pair of socks. And then what I'll do is when I go out for a couple weeks, I will just make sure I have a place where I can wash my clothes, or I'll get my clothes washed in the sink, right? It's just when you go out there, you do it. When you like to travel light and you're a minimalist, you try to figure out what's available to you, and then you just go with the flow, right? But Ian says, great place, but the Spanish have fewer English speakers than any European country I've been to. That is problematic. Yeah, I happen to agree. I happen to speak Spanish semi-fluently. I actually have some great stories about like interacting with Spaniards, because again, you might imagine that somebody like me, right? My parents were both born in Puerto Rico, and I grew up speaking Spanish, but it's a different type of Spanish, right? It's like very much a dialect that's a native to Puerto Rico, and beyond that, it's native to New York, right? I am what you would call a New Yorican, right? So I'm a New Yorker that happens to be of Puerto Rican descent, so we actually even have our own language. We have our terms. We call it Spanglish, right? It's like a mixture. And all my fellow Puerto Ricans that are New Yorkers as well. My friend Danny happens to be one as well. He grew up in the Bronx. I grew up in Brooklyn. And even if you don't know, right? Maybe Morgan knows, right? There's a thing called Spanglish, right? That if you grew up as somebody of Puerto Rican descent, and my Dominicans are in that same boat, I'm sure all my other Latin American countries are in the same boat. When you grow up, right, because you're assimilating, right? You are trying to speak English so that you can go to school, but you hear Spanish at home, and your brain basically just mixes everything up, right? So my brain growing up would have sentences, right? My favorite one, right? And I get made fun of this all the time. I grew up, and I still say it, bien nice. That's bien nice. And you're like, and you're sitting there, and like if I go and I mention that to like somebody that really grew up speaking Spanish like in natively, right? In like Colombia, in Puerto Rico, in Ecuador, in Venezuela, in Bogota, and all the other South American and Latin American and Caribbean countries, they'd be like, "What is being nice?" And they'll laugh. Like, and then I'll laugh, right? Because I just realized that I just spoke Spanglish without even knowing it. And you just say it like, and my mom even says it. My mom was born on the island, and she says being nice, right? Because she's been in the U.S. since the 50s, and she's like assimilated as well. Like she would probably go to Puerto Rico and say bien nice, and they'll laugh at her. And and maybe she won't smile like I will, but I laugh at that stuff. I got great stories of Spain. And then Ian says, whereas the Portuguese I know speak Spanish and English very well. Yes, the Portuguese. Shout out to my Portuguese brethren. So the Portuguese, especially in Brazil, I find that Brazil is very integrative. I haven't spent any time in Brazil, but I have interacted with a lot more Brazilians than folks that are from Portugal. But my understanding, like I have a very and again, I'll share this. I have a very deep kinship to my Brazilian folks, because what I've come to learn in terms of language is that a lot of the Spanish that spoke on the island of Puerto Rico happens to have roots in Portuguese, particularly the Portuguese, the Brazilian Portuguese. So I figured that's no wonder why we get on so well, right? They have like a very my Brazilian brethren happen to have like a much more laid back, right? For South America, right? Like Puerto Rico is part of the Caribbean, so you have the Dominican Republic, you have Cuba, you have Haiti, and of course you have Puerto Rico, and then Jamaica and all those other islands that comprise the Caribbean. Like we have a more laid back, right? That's part of this attire that I wear. It's a nod, right? This is a Cuban guayabera, and it's very much a laid back, although it has formal roots. It's very much casual wear for a lot of islanders, and then you have it in Mexico, you have it in the Philippines, and I'm sure a lot of other places that I can't name right now. Right? The Dominicans called it the chacabana. They have a term for it, I believe, in the Philippines that I can't remember. So shout out to all those folks that rock this dress. That's why I feel like sometimes when I wear this and I'm not like around fellow Puerto Ricans, everybody kind of knows. They kind of know a little bit about me when I wear this. It's kind of like a uniform, right? And everybody's like, they might look at the hat and not know. They'll look at the glasses and maybe think one thing, and then they'll see the guayabera, and then I'll get in my neighborhood. They'll say, "Hey, hola." Como vas, right? So you know what? Like I said, it's signaling, right? We sometimes we wear stuff because it's a signal out to the external world, right? Obviously, it's a signal that I'm not cookie cutter, right? I'm not cookie cutter. Maybe I'll find some place where I fit in, right? Where I will blend in, right? Maybe my guayabera when I go to Puerto Rico next, I will go and I'll blend in there, but maybe I won't blend in because I wear like a felt hat and everybody there is wearing a straw hat, right? Whatever, doesn't matter. I don't mind standing out, as long as I'm like okay and I don't feel unsafe standing out. So yeah, just a little bit. I think I went off of like on the most Luke tangent there, and I apologize for you guys if all you guys want to see was my hat. But I will talk about this hat, right? Let me do that now, right? Before I go off on another tangent, I'm gonna go and I'm going to do as per tradition. I'm going to try to share my screen without breaking anything. Again, no promises. I got, hopefully I still got Paul and Ian on here and whoever else is still here. And I'll try to share this again without breaking anything. No promises. Let's see here. Okay, so for some reason it's not recognizing. Let's see if I do this. It's not recognizing the thing or whatever it has you. Let's see if I try it again. Like I said, it's always some kind of technical difficulty, and I try to Oh, there we go. I think I got it now. Let's see here. Can you guys see this? Hopefully you guys can see this. And let's see. I don't know if it's coming on. I don't think it's coming on. Oh, that's why I had to hide this. Okay, only dead fish swimming with the stream. Yeah, I like that. Ian, you have really great phrases. Like I said, I feel like I have a kinship with Ian only because well, not only because, but primarily because Ian has great phrases. So let's see if this comes up. I'm having a little trouble here. So obviously I'm not seeing it on the screen. I don't know why. Oh, I see why. I know why. Let's see if this is what I'm going to do. There. Now you should see it. Sorry. I had like kind of a little bit of a senior moment there. Shout out to my seniors. No offense on that. Hopefully, can you guys see that? Okay, excellent. Thank you, Ian. Yeah, so we had about 6 people in here. Thank you, Paul. Again, I just want to show you so you can see here in this light. Again, this is one of my photos because I know the ledge here that I used to take this photo, and you guys already know the story by now. My version of hat nerdery is something that I borrowed from my Fedora loungers and my Fedora lounge lizards. And usually, and again, I've never really interacted with one of my Fedora lounge lizards in terms of like, oh, you do the same thing I do. like I got this from you guys, but I don't know if you guys do the same thing I do, but it seems like you do. And it varies, right? So like a lot of the core, a lot of the regulars there, right? Just like Cheers is just another form of Cheers, right? I'm a regular or semi-regular on Fedora Lounge. I try to check it up every day, but I'm not on there all day only because I got other stuff that I do. But we on the Fedora Lounge and some of us on the Facebook groups, we will get a new hat and we'll try to share, right? And what I'll do is because of my phone doesn't take great photos. So regardless of what you feel here, I've seen some really great photos, and my phone is not able to. Sorry, Samsung, but you are like one of the base models. I used to have an iPhone that took way better photos, but now I'm an Android person because it's a cheaper phone. But my Android that I chose just doesn't take great photos. But I got it for a great price. I'm not that upset. But so yes, I took this with my Android, my Samsung, and so you can see the first hook, right? Getting back to the hook of the hat. When I saw this hat, I was like, wow, that color, right? That color like drew me in like a moth, right? So that's probably a poor analogy for a hat person. It's like we kind of spend our time fighting moths. But it's like so saying something like drew me in like a moth, but you guys get the analogy, right? This hat, the color that was like, wow, I like that color. It's very much like it had the same impact that the hat that red hat, right? Remember the Carmen Sandiego red hat that I got from Kevin Gerber? That was a custom hat by D-Bar J, but again, it wasn't custom made for me. I just bought that because it was custom made for a friend of Kevin's that was having a health problem, and Kevin agreed to sell that he agreed to sell a lot of his hats. So I don't know it yet. Probably most of my hats probably came from that gentleman. I don't know I think I know his name. I think I have his name on my hat, but I tried to respect his privacy. So that's why you didn't see, and I didn't share the name of that gentleman. But I hope, if you do watch this, or Kevin, if you watch this, I hope your friend is doing better and is on the mend. Definitely privately send me a message and let me know how that situation is transpiring, because I haven't met him, but now I feel a kinship to him only because now I own at least one of his hats. I really hope everything works out. Anyway, back to the hat. This hat, besides being like the color, right? So I knew when I saw this, and I don't know, I can't recall whether this was my first Champ hat. All I know is that I knew of the Champ reputation, right? We knew that Champ made hats to a price point, right? So the reason why I made this stream is that you kind of like already in the last few episodes have seen a lot of variety in like I'm just going to say quality, right? Like, for lack of a better term, there's no offense meant by that. But all I knew is that I knew Champ's reputation as being like an everyday man hat, right? And I'm fascinated by that, right? I'm really fascinated that the hat industry, right? So we talked about John Kavanagh and how he purchased, Champ because he saw that there was a vision, and he had a vision for Champ as being that entry level hat for the everyday man. And I got to think, given the history, Miller Brothers put out Atom hats in the 20s. And I feel like Kavanagh in the 40s, right? As Kavanagh was building, right? We talked about the great John Kavanagh and yesterday, and how he had a vision, right? John Kavanagh was very much as important as, let's say, John B. Stetson was to the hat industry, right? We owe a lot to John Kavanagh. So shout out to John Kavanagh and any of his descendants. You are kind of like one of like the core figures, right? I think of John B. Stetson, and I think of John Kavanagh. So the two Johns as being really vital to the hat history, right? Especially domestically here in the United States, as well as the influence of those two hat brands abroad, right? So I think everybody, I think, knows of Stetson. Maybe less people know of Kavanagh, but you certainly heard of Dobbs and Knox, and maybe some of the other great brands that were associated with the conglomerate known as Hat Corporation of America. But I'll talk a little bit more about that in relation to Champ in a little bit. But I just want to kind of get you, I'm trying to relive the process of of how Luke came about this hat, right? And I don't remember where I got it from. I probably got it on eBay or something. I don't know. But the side profile, holy cow. You guys know that I'm a big fan of the Stingy-Brim, but when I saw this profile, right? So it might have not looked like this, but when I took this photo, I was like, oh my God, gorgeous. Like for me, right? It has like a really thick ribbon, right? And that a decorative feather. Now I don't know if this is two feathers, or one feather, and it's just really elaborate. I just think it lends a really, like, whoever did this, whether it came original on the hat or they added it afterward, I will never change this. Like I don't, like, this is a hat that I probably won't get rid of easily because of the way that it looks. Right. So besides the color and that kind of that light that shines on the felt, again, mind you, this is not a hat, like, you could probably tell this is not a hat that's of the finest felt quality. Right. Even though, like, one of the phrases for Champ is feel the felt, right? It was there. This is a gateway hat, right? This is a hat that Champ sold probably under the Hat Corporation of America banner, or under the Hat Co. We'll talk a little bit about Hat Co later, but I'm going to save that to another stream, right? We'll talk about Hat Co. We'll talk about Resistol and that whole history. One, because I haven't done that research yet, and I want to make sure I'm prepared. But two, I want to keep this focus on Champ because, one, we already introduced Hat Corporation of America. I'm just trying to take this as the next step of Champ and their role in that lineage. So yeah, this profile was like, for me, like, every time I try to, like, think about this hat and why I own this hat still to this day, this profile, it has everything I like, right? It has like that thick band, that thick ribbon. It has that decorative feather that's really bright and really adds some pop to the hat. It also has that color, right, that we talked about, that Ian and Paul complimented, and I also think it's a flattering color. And it has the two front dents. Obviously, it's a very low crown height, and if you can see, it has some of that brim binding, right? It has something around the brim that still, it's the same color as the felt, but it adds a little pizzazz, right? I'm a big fan of brim binding, like Paul. Like, I'm working on a hat with Paul right now that is gonna be, I think it's gonna mix so many of my passions with the hat, right? Like that crown, that stratoliner look, plus the brim binding, and it's going to be an alternative brim binding. I'll show you that when that hat's ready. I will show that hat, and I think it's going to come out really sharp. Shout out to Paul for indulging me in helping me on that experience. Paul's great. Again, I'm not endorsed by Paul. Paul is a regular here, and Paul will be back tomorrow. So just FYI, if you love the inaugural episode with Paul's going to come on tomorrow. That's the game plan, at least, Lord willing. Paul will come on tomorrow, and we'll talk about a couple things hat related that Paul is, an expert on. And I think you guys are going to get real enjoyment and kick out of watching Paul explain it. Yeah, thank you, Paul. You are welcome to, and it's a great thing to create a new colorway and style. Yeah, thank you, Paul. This is one of the great things about, like, real, like gentlemen and hat enthusiasts, right? So Paul, if you guys haven't seen him on previous episodes, Paul is a fan, just like a lot of you guys that might watch this from the Fedora Lounge and also from the Facebook groups. He is a fan of the big crown, the high crown, the nod to, like, the 40s, the 30s, and maybe even the early 50s. That high crown, and I happen to appreciate that style, even though I don't own one yet. Doesn't mean I won't own one in the future, but yeah, shout out to my high crown lovers. I happen to be a fan of the low crown, and then when I saw that stratoliner on that episode, if you look at that stratoliner that Paul's working on for one of his customers, oh my God. Like, you saw my reaction. I was kind of like a kid in a candy store, and all I could muster was gorgeous. Like, that's gorgeous. Like, you know what I mean? Right? If you guys want to see that look of like a kid in a candy store, when I talk about when I push the buy button on a hat, I had that dumb look on my face. I was like, oh, I'm gonna get that, and you probably get the same thing, but maybe you guys, I mean, you probably saw it on screen without me knowing it. Like I'm outing myself here on that stream, where it's kind of like I had that dumb look on my face, right? Hat envy, just great. Yeah, you guys know it. Like I said, we're all like, hats make us like kids, right? Like that's one of the beautiful parts of collecting culture. That's not just limited to hats, right? Sometimes you get it when you look at a great watch, or you look at a great car, or whatever you collect. Maybe a great Pokemon card. Shout out to my Pokemon card collectors. They probably get that same thing. I call it the dopamine effect, right? Just like when you see a piece of beautiful art or a piece of like a great movie that you can't look away. Like that was the look that I got when I saw Paul's Stratoliner. Not that Paul has many great hats, but for me, the one that got me was that Stratoliner, because it just looked luxurious, and it just looked beautiful. Like it was a work of art. So shout out to Paul. If you haven't checked out his website, definitely do. I posted it on live streams. I will get it back on here as well. That way you can give some love to my man Paul. He has a great YouTube channel. Lots of great content on Paul's YouTube channel. So even if you don't buy one of his great hats, you can at least go over to his YouTube channel. Matter of fact, if you want to go there now, even though my stream is going, you can go there now. I don't mind. You can go there and then hit up Paul with the subscribe and maybe like a couple videos, because Paul's very much an ambassador on this. He's a like-minded individual. He doesn't do this like, obviously he's in business and he makes money from selling his hats, but he does it out of a passion, and that's why like he's called Passion for Hats, right? I think it's like one of the best YouTube names that you could have, because I think it's really apt. So shout out to Paul, for indulging us here, and we will have Paul back tomorrow. So yeah, life is good. Yeah. Anyhow, let me continue on with the slideshow, because I get very verbose. So sorry about that. So yeah, this is again the inside of the hat. You guys can already know from like what Paul says, thanks for all the interest and support. Hey, Paul, it's my pleasure. Like I said, I know you are a man that's very busy, and I am touched that you take the time out to, besides create the content. I know that from your live stream, from when we had you on, that you run several businesses, and I told you, I still tell you the same thing I told you then. I don't know how you find the energy, but bless you, and I hope I'm like half as energetic. Like it inspires me, right? Because I don't make hats, I don't repair hats, but it inspires me to want to learn more about the process, and also inspires me just to do this YouTube channel, because I've seen you, and I've seen a lot of the other work, right? Ian says Paul's hats are a work of art. Beautiful. I agree. Like I say, you owe it to yourself to check out his website, and if you have some extra coin, right, and you want to support a fellow hat maker from overseas, maybe if you're in the U.S. and you want to support, I don't care where you are, right? If you Paul's website, you can order one of his hats, and like I said, if you've seen Paul on this channel, if you've seen Paul on his channel, you know that he's very much an ambassador for this. And why not support him, right? Let's support our fellow hat makers, our hat enthusiasts, right, of all ilks, because it really is important. Because again, Paul, I think just like my channel, and just like Paul, I'm going to speak for Paul here, that I think he gets extra energy when he sees people that really admire his work. And it's worthy of being admired, right? It's not, I'm not blowing smoke here like they say here in the U.S. It's really, really great craftsmanship. And Paul says, thank you, Ian. I do spend time just looking at them, and others just for further inspiration. A great hobby to enjoy. I agree. Like I said, if you're a fellow hat nerd like me and Paul and Ian and Morgan, you guys know, like, we're not saying anything that's new to you, right? But if you're watching this channel and you're thinking about getting into hats, just so you know, like it's worthwhile. It's a worthwhile endeavor, right? Even if you just like looking at hats, you can see my hats, like I said, and you can see Paul's hats when Paul comes on here. Maybe one day we'll get Ian showing his hats on here, and we'll get Morgan showing her hats. But like I said, I call them my board of directors here. It's kind of like comical. Like I do that kind of like in jest, right? Like I don't have a big channel. I don't have a company, but I treat it like that, right? I study organizational behavior, and I carry myself very much as a brand. And hopefully I'll be able to build some brand loyalty. Like I got my regulars here that come out and hang out with me. And again, the nice thing about this organization or this brand is that we definitely have room to grow. Just like Paul's growing his brands, I try to grow my brand. And it's the Good Luke's brand, right? So the idea is that you come here, you get good vibes, and you get good company, hopefully good company. I try not to toot my own horn, but I very much want you guys to come here and then expect to see, hopefully some nice hats, at least nice hats to me, and enjoy hats from all types of collections. And I throw that out to everybody, no matter what kind of hat collector you are, man. Even if you're a baseball or fit, right now I drew the line, but like I said, I know my son collects baseball caps and trucker hats. Maybe one day I'll be able to bring him into the fine hat community. But in the meantime, I let him do his own thing, and I just do my own thing, right? But if you like this thing, even if it's from a distance, right? At least let's say you only collect cats to hang up on your wall. You're very much welcome here. Like I said, maybe you can send a photo or join here. Maybe not wearing your hat, right? If you don't want to wear your hat, but you just want to show your collection, that you have like Luke, and I'm sure I speak for Paul, Ian, and Morgan. We very much want to see your hats, right? So like I said, whatever type of hat collector you happen to be, I respect it. So you're welcome here. This is just a little bit of the inside of the hat. By all means, unremarkable hat, right? Again, it's just, this brand wasn't meant to be like a showpiece, right? This is very much an entry-level hat. You can see the black sweatband, right? A lot of this hat is kind of built to a price point, right? And we'll talk about a little bit more about that later. So I don't want to, like I said, I'm not claiming that this is something like some work of art, like one of Paul's pieces, but it is a hat that endeared myself. It endeared itself to me for the reasons that I've already outlined. Paul says, love to see more hats and new designs, styles, materials, and colors. That's right. Like I said, Paul probably has the ability to make just about any hat that you want to make, crown height and otherwise. But like I said, Paul came at this hobby from love of the Dillinger, right? The Johnny Depp style high hat, high crown hat. Morgan is the same variety. Ian, I don't know how you fall in terms of that spectrum. I think I saw your Adam hats, but I do see like on your profile, it kind of has I think Ian and me share a love for that wide band, that wide ribbon, and then maybe a little lower crown height, right? So it's a style in the US that's synonymous with the 60s and 70s and even the early 80s, right? That low crown, maybe there's a varying level of thickness to the band. I happen to love a really thick ribbon. Like I mentioned with pork pies, I'm a big fan of the thick back bow. If I ever modify my pork pie, my Dunlap Supreme, I will probably put a thick, I mentioned this before, but I'll repeat it. I'll put a thick back bow ribbon on it if I can find it, and if I'm willing to do it myself, or I'll pay somebody like Paul or Kevin to do it for me, or whoever Morgan recommends. I know Morgan has worked with several hatters. Whatever. I just, again, the only reason I haven't done it is not for lack of funds or lack of it's really been, besides laziness, it's really been like I have like this compulsion of not altering the hats, right? Again, remember, there's no right or wrong way to do this. Like some people, like Paul, they modified their hats. Like that's how Paul became a hat maker. And a lot of other folks, like we talked about Hats by Sam. There's no wrong way to do this. I just happen to have like this little compulsion that when I receive a hat, you really have to like put me under the gun for me to want to modify it. It's just me and my quirkiness. Paul says, haha, I just selected my hat to wear tomorrow, and it's a wine colored wide brim with 50 millimeter wide crown trim. in Western weight felt. Hey, that sounds like an excellent collection. Paul, that sounds like we're in for a real treat tomorrow. Like I said, if you haven't seen Paul's, like if you can't wait till tomorrow, rewatch the episode that I did with Paul. Paul was like showed so many great looking hats. I'm sure tomorrow we'll see some more great hats. This is what I really want to get. Like I said, I say this basically every stream. This channel is not about Luke's hat collection. That's just a straw man for me to like disarm you guys and hopefully get you guys to come on here and share your hats. Because this is about community. It's not about Luke. So yeah, Paul, I'm looking forward to seeing that tomorrow. Ian says I can't wear felt in the summer. Yeah. Ian, I can't blame you. I happen to do it, but I know the difficulty. I wear felt year round, but every once in a while, like I'll go to visit family in Florida, like towards like near the Miami area, and you see Panama hats left and right, but I'll still bring my felt hat and I'll sweat like a you know what in church. I won't say it because I'm trying to keep this a clean channel. But the budding grandpa in me, I can't help it. Want to say the H word. But I sweat like H word in church. And, I can't help it, right? Sorry about that. And I don't mean to greet grass. But yeah, I just happen to do it. It doesn't mean like maybe when my collection evolves and I start really, I'll give in to the Panama hat. Maybe what I'll do is that will be my travel hat for warmer climates, right? If I go to Puerto Rico, if I go back to Florida to visit family, or if I go into any other tropical type environment to visit, I will probably do so. I do have a straw hat. I mean, I will show that one day. It's just an unremarkable hat, but it's an important hat. And I'll wear it for you guys, so you guys can see. It's a Trilby straw blue hat that I got in Split, Croatia. But anyway, I got off another tangent. So yeah, I just wanted to show this hat. You can see the sweatband here. The sweatband is not in terrible shape, but it definitely was a hat that was worn. You can see a little bit of staining in the lining. Again, some people would never wear somebody else's hat. That's the nice thing, is that if there's vintage hat collecting is not for everybody. If you're uncomfortable wearing a hat that was on somebody else's head, and you don't want to you don't like the process of cleaning it, because I don't clean my hats, but I know that you can. Ian gave us a great tip of saddle soap. See, Ian uses saddle soap. Again, I'm too lazy to do that. I just buy hats. I buy vintage hats that are in decent enough shape where I think I could get them and wear them, and maybe take a hat brush, right? So I usually if I can take a rag to the sweatband, and I can do something that without using chemicals, I will do that. But pretty much I just dry clean. I don't know if that's the term. Dry. I know dry bash is a term, but dry clean, I just think of like something you do with your clothes. But I'm going to use the term anyway. I dry clean my hats with a piece of microfiber cloth. So if I see the sweatband needs a wipe down, I'll do that. And I'm sure like Paul has tips for like what I can do. I just don't like using chemicals. I don't like steaming my hats. Again, no offense to anybody that does. I see the allure. I know it's very therapeutic. It's therapeutic for me to watch it, right? So I've seen Paul do the steaming, and I've seen Kevin do the steaming. Hat Life Adventures. That's another great channel. Chris Walden from Hat Life Adventures, another great YouTube channel, right? So besides Paul's passion for hats, go check out Chris Walden's Hat Life Adventures. I believe that's the name of the YouTube channel. Great channel. Also check out a channel called Johnny. I believe it's Jonny. He's a young fellow. I don't know how old he is, but he looks like a young fellow. Has few great videos, has a very soothing voice. Shout out to Johnny. Johnny already said that he's going to come on here. We just got to work out the particulars. So Johnny, if you see this, we'll do it, man. We're going to have Paul tomorrow. I have the ability, just FYI, now that I'm using StreamYard, right? So remember, now I know StreamYard is like somewhere here, the logo. I just happen to use the free software. Now that I have StreamYard, I'm able to get like up to 6 guests on here at once. Now, again, I haven't tried it. I've only tried it with Paul with 1 guest. But now I feel confident that I could get 6 guests on here, up to 6 guests. Doesn't mean we need to have 6 guests. That way we can have a roundtable discussion, right? Like I feel like a nice evolution of this discussion would be a roundtable, maybe with Paul, maybe with Ian, maybe with Morgan, maybe with Johnny, maybe with the Had It Professor, right? Brad Bowers. If we can get Had It Professor on here, we can get Kevin Gerber. I think we have, for me, instead of just me being the only one here, chewing your ear out and showing you all my hat collection, we can get a roundtable discussion here. So if you know somebody that would want to be interested in doing that, even if it's not you, but you know somebody that would love to do that and want to talk hats with me, and maybe me and Paul, you know what? Let's do it. Paul says, as for cleaning, it's quite possible for an enthusiast to remove the liner and soak it overnight to clean. Then use a leather cleaner and feed the sweatband, and of course, steam the felt. Yes. Pro tip from Paul. Again, one of the many reasons why Paul is an asset to this community. He is a bespoke hatter, and before he got into bespoke hat making, he got into restoration of hats, and he has great videos. So if you even have like the remotest interest in watching that process, definitely check out Paul's channel at Passion for Hats. He has great material. The nice thing about Paul is that Paul is not somebody that he's in the business, but he's not somebody that wants to hoard any knowledge. Like, he very much wants to share what he knows, because Paul happens to come at it from the side where he had to go and learn this process and buy the equipment. And he is now in a position where he can expedite that process for you guys. And anybody that has the inclination and the willingness to devote the time that it takes to this craft, Paul can fast track you into this process. And I shout out to Paul. God bless you for doing that. That's great that you do that for the community. And you're not. I know that you're not the only one, but you're the one that comes here, and that's not lost on me. So shout out to Paul again. Champ hats, feel the felt. That was their rally cry. That was their logo. Again, we know that the felt quality of Champ was they had varying levels of felt quality. Paul says, happy to share the experience. Thank you, my friend. Again, we are much better for it. Shout out to Paul. So the way I understood that Champ started off as not a Hat Corporation of America brand, right? So they actually started off making a lot of the high crown hats. So some really great examples on the Fedora Lounge. They have that, that look, right? And then what happened was when John Kavanaugh got a hold of the brand, I'll go into that. I'm probably stealing some of my own thunder here, but we'll talk about that. Like, they took on a persona. Like they were, if they had a different marketing position prior to Hat Corporation of America, when they got to in the ownership of John Kavanaugh, Kavanaugh already had a vision for what he wanted for Champ, and he implemented by all means that vision perfectly. So just to hear, Authors Men's Shop in Ripon, Wisconsin. So again, I don't know a lot about the Authors Men's Shop, but if you're from the Wisconsin area and you either know or have assisted, maybe you were a customer or maybe you know the family, and you find this video, I know that would be like a long shot, but I put that out there. So when I profile a hat shop here, like, I always try to go and pay homage, not just to the brand, but to the hat shop that was connected to this particular model. I do that for one, because I get nostalgia from it, right? That's part of the another hook when I buy one of these hats. Now I feel like I own a piece of Ripon. I don't know how it may, maybe butchering the pronunciation, but Ripon, Wisconsin, Authors Men's Shop, that is connected with this hat. And by all means, the hat was procured. It was I'm going to just say procured for the Authors Men's Hat Shop to sell to the original owner of this hat. So shout out to Authors Men's Shop. I doubt that you exist still, but if you do, actually, I'm pretty sure it doesn't exist. And again, I'm almost positive this hat shop is no longer with us, because I did do some of that research, but I just don't remember it right now. So yeah, again, I just wanted to share some of that because I'm the type of hat nerd that loves that stuff. Also, there's the Kasmir Finish, which I believe it's exclusive to It's exclusive to Hat Corporation of America, right? At least. And it might be no, it's not exclusive to Champ. Even though I think I've seen more Kasmir Finish, and that's really, I believe that's a nod to the sweatband, right? And maybe it's just marketing talk, right? We know that hat manufacturers were not beyond just putting some fancy name on their technique, and it maybe doesn't mean anything, right? It could just be marketing speak, but it's something that if you collect these hats, you have probably seen Kasmir Finish at some point, and maybe you know more about it than I do. Like, I happen to think that there's nothing special about the Kasmir Finish, but I could be wrong. Like I said, I've been wrong before. I will be wrong again. Any opinions, right? I'm an expert in my own opinion. And I am though, I fashion myself an intellectual, right? So I am somebody that I will and I mentioned it before, I will try to have an informed opinion, with some, maybe hopefully some data, but because I fashion myself an intellectual, I'm not opposed to changing my opinion if I get new data that I happen to believe is better data. Again, it's one of those things where I feel like I'm not doing anybody favors if I just propagate lies here. So if I happen to think it's an opinion, I will call it out. And I'm not opposed of you calling out. It's like, hey, Luke, you're pitching that as fact, but it's actually opinion. I'm fine with that. Like I said, I will get here. I already got somebody I think that's way more knowledgeable about hats, and I'm hopefully going to get more. I'm going to get Kevin on here. I'm going to get hopefully Brad Bowers, the Hat It Professor, and anybody else here that like I said, probably forgot more than I ever knew about hats, especially fine hats. I want you on here because like I said, it's my duty for me as the creator of this brand of Good Lukes. I want it to be a place where you get quality information, you get treated with respect, and no matter what kind of hat person you happen to be, and how you approach the hat world. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that. So that was the hat. Again, I'll talk about as per usual. I will share a little bit of the Chat GPT, some of the Chat GPT knowledge that's out there. This one just happened to be, like I said, I know that a lot of people are weirded out by Chat GPT, but I happen to view it as a tool. But I think I always learn something, right? So I'll just start reading. This is something that I always do. I'll just in case nobody wants to read this on their screen. Historical highlights, origins, and popular era. Champ Hats traces its roots back to Sunbury, Pennsylvania. All right. Shout out to Pennsylvania. Shout out to Sunbury. I don't think I know where that's located at, but if you do, maybe you can let me know. But it was active from at least the 1940s through the mid 60s, as evidenced by found ads, right? So you can see the source, right? There's the Fedora Lounge. That's a source. And then there's a place that I've never visited, but I will now. It's called the Vintage Haberdashers blog. So shout out to the Vintage Haberdashers blog. That might be the first time I've seen that. So that's, again, you just goes to show you that Chat GPT is a useful tool for learning about hats. I don't know that. I don't know that blog, but I will find out more about it. And it looks like it's up there with the Fedora Lounge. Chat GPT chose to support its information with the Fedora Lounge and the Vintage Haberdashers blog. For all I know, the Vintage Haberdashers blog is somebody that posts on the Fedora Lounge, and they post it twice, right? They posted information on both venues. No problem with that. Again, I will caution that, like, not everything I put here you can take as gospel, because again, just like Luke is an expert in his own opinion, that just happens to be, I think that's just a male quality, right? I think hopefully I'm not being too hard on my fellow guys, but we guys have a reputation, sometimes like a little bit not great reputation, of passing ourselves off as more knowledgeable than we actually are. And I as a good psychologist, I at least try to be a good psychologist. I'm one of those that I will call it out, right? I'm like, everybody knows, right? Like I'm gonna say, I have to share this story, right? Because or at least the stereotype. Everybody knows the stereotype of a guy working on his car, right? And all of a sudden, some other guys from the neighborhood will come around, see you working on the car, and they'll like try to speak like they know everything they know there is about cars, right? And like you probably know already, right, from talking to them, whether they're a car guy or not. Like I said, I don't think I'm a car guy, but I think a lot of guys think they're car guys. They're like, oh yeah, I'm tearing down this engine here, and that they're probably not, because the way they're speaking, they probably don't know their engine from their transmission or whatnot, right? It's just like we've learned as guys somehow that we need to come across as authoritative on guy things, like anything mechanical or anything machinery related. And I try not to feed into, like, for me, Good Luke's tries to, I call it out because I think it's more comical than anything. So if you're one of those guys, I'm not trying to call you out. Like, I'm just trying to, like, I think of it as, wow, that's a thing that exists. So if you know that exists, like, hopefully I didn't make that up. But I feel like in my observation of my surroundings and of my fellow man, right? I'm very much an observer. I have been since I talked about how I used to observe my dad, right? And that's why I could recreate like his routine of getting up in the morning and what he did, right? I've always been that way, and that's probably why I got drawn into the field of psychology, right? And then from psychology, I focused on organizational psychology, and well, that's why I am the way I am. Yeah? So if you want to know more about Luke and why he talks the way he talks, talking about master motives and things like that, well, because I'm a psychology by training, and you can't change just because you can't take the Brooklyn out of Luke. You can't take the psychology out of me, because I was a psychologist probably before I was trained for one. I just didn't have the credentials, right? Anyway, back to ChatGPT, positioned as mass market quality, right? You guys, if you guys seen my stream on for my Atom hats that I posted about maybe a couple streams ago. Again, apologize because I can't remember. It's already been number 21. So I profiled my Adams hats. I have several, just like I have several champs. But this was something, and I got to feel like, without knowing, I'm going to speculate here, but I got a feeling that John Kavanaugh saw something like Adam hats and what Miller Brothers did with Adam hats in St. Louis, Missouri. And he said, you know what? I need that. I got all these great brands. Remember, Kavanaugh was somebody that started off as an apprentice for Dunlap and then grew and became successful enough where he purchased Dunlap. So he purchased the brand that he worked for. That's a beautiful story to me. Shout out to Dunlap, prior to Hat Corporation of America. Shout out to Hat Corporation of America, and shout out to John Kavanaugh, who had the vision, right, to say and to recognize the power of branding, right? And Paul very much talks about branding and how he's a person that builds brands. Again, I know of that, but like probably not at that level, right? Paul's probably an expert. I'm somebody that just appreciates the idea of brand and building of brands and enhancing of brand, right? And the power of branding, right? So the reason why brands are so important is because brands live longer than people do, right? So the person that came up with Coca-Cola probably is long dead, but we know Coca-Cola because that brand, it lives and it has staying power beyond the people. So I'm gonna get off that soapbox, but I could talk about brands for forever. It's like, I think that's probably why me and Paul get on so well. I think we both recognize the power of branding. Anyhow, shout out to my brand creators and my brand developers out there. Besides Paul and obviously myself, I'm trying to build a brand here. Positioned as mass market quality, the brand was known for offering good quality felt hats at affordable prices, around $7.50 in the 1940s and 1950s, while more premium labels like Stetson or Mallory sold at around $10 and up, right? So you can see the margins here, right? So it's not that far off, but maybe in the 40s and 50s, the difference between $7.50 and $10 could have been huge, right? Given what you could purchase, right? So we're talking about a 33% increase in price, right? For going from $7.50 to $10 is a 33% markup. But Kavanaugh, like being the good the good businessman and the wise brand designer that he knew the value, right? If he didn't know it himself, he probably got the idea from Adam Hatch and Miller Brothers, who created the Adam Hatch line, and say, you know what, I got to get a piece of that. I got to compete with Adam Hatch, because if I don't, somebody else is going to do it. And that's pretty much the way business works, right? If you guys know about business, there's competition, right? So even though Kavanaugh probably got, well, actually, let's be honest, Kavanaugh probably didn't get along with a lot of his fellow brands, right? This is just a little tidbit I didn't really share because it's not really positive. Kavanaugh was somebody that took a lot of people to court. Again, I don't know a lot more of it than that, but the way I understood it is that when Kavanaugh innovated a lot of things like the Kavanaugh Edge, and a lot of other innovations, he put out patents out, right? Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with patenting up. But besides creating the patents, he was somebody that also enforced his patents. So he took a lot of people like Stetson, I think he took to court, and a lot of other manufacturers, because he was like, no, that's my patent. You need to like get my permission, and we need to work something out. There's nothing wrong with that. I respect that. Like I said, the law is the law. Yeah, Ian is laughing. Yeah. So John Kavanaugh, he was beloved by many, and he's lauded by many, like myself. But a lot of people, probably his peers, they probably like, that jerk, like I said, it's business is business. And I think John Kavanaugh probably didn't endear himself to a lot of his peers, because he probably took them to court, or maybe threatened it, right? He probably gave him that cease and desist letter that's famous now, but maybe was still widely used back in the day. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I respect remember, the pen is mightier than sword, right? When you get the cease and desist letter, he means business, right? And Kavanaugh was very much a titan of industry, right? Kavanaugh probably had the money to take you to court and take you for a pretty penny. So you didn't want to mess around with Kavanaugh. Again, I don't know his personality, but I know his reputation, and I know the kind of stuff. And if you want to read about it, then I'm sure there's books about it, and probably Brad Bowers could talk about it. Again, I am really intrigued with the personas behind a lot of these brands, and the people that created these brands, and what kind of person they were day to day, right? Again, we talk about like the jerks that we have in here. I'm sure some of these people could have been jerks in real life. I don't know. I try to separate that out from like the impact that they had on history. So if Kavanaugh was a jerk, or if you knew that John B. Stetson was a jerk, I'm interested in knowing about it, but it won't probably change my opinion. Like I said, Warren Buffett, I compared John Kavanaugh yesterday to Warren Buffett. I happen to love Warren Buffett. I do know that he has a brand, right? Warren Buffett is very much a brand akin to his Berkshire Hathaway, right? He's a very folksy old billionaire, multi-billionaire, and people are like, oh, he's the lovable grandpa. But behind that lovable grandpa was a very shrewd businessman, and somebody that you didn't want to mess around with in the business world, right? Like Warren Buffett was very much a gangster in that business world. Again, very nice person and probably pleasant to deal with, but very shrewd, and probably like you couldn't put one over on Warren now, let alone Warren Buffett in his heyday. Like that leopard doesn't change his spots, right? So shout out to Warren Buffett, shout out to Berkshire Hathaway. I love the history. I love watching that documentary. Warren Buffett is, if you have a good fortune, you can go on YouTube and type "Becoming Warren Buffett." There's a documentary on Warren Buffett that was commissioned by him and has Warren Buffett talking about how he was like in his history. And it's one of those few like documentaries that you actually have the Warren Buffett himself narrating and approving and telling you, right? Like obviously you have biographers. A lot of biographies are done by biographers, and maybe sometimes the biographer never even knew the person. But this is different in that HBO went and commissioned this biography and actually got Warren Buffett to tell his life story. And if you got to be like maybe you don't care about business, and maybe you don't care about billionaires, but Warren Buffett is somebody that I hold in high esteem. And it's one of those things where I'm like, you owe it to yourself to check it out, even if you don't care about anything. He's not a hat person, but he's very much somebody I'm very interested in, that personality. He happens to be an old person now. He's 90 something years old and still doing what he loves, right? Like, if you're a hat person that's 90 and see somebody else doing what they love, I'm not even 90 yet, and I can appreciate that. So, shout out to Warren Buffett. Anyway, I digress. The Field of Felt was a motto, right? Champs is a different brand. Champs tagline emphasized the tactile quality of its materials. Some collectors still praise the felt density, even comparing it favorably to modern higher-end hats like Borsalino. Now, again, as somebody that owns one of these hats, this is probably not one of them, right? Like, this felt is okay, but I very much can feel the difference between this felt, right, as a non-expert, to something like my Borsalino. Like, this does not hold the candle to my Borsalino. It doesn't hold the candle to my Celentino. It doesn't hold the candle to my D-Bar J. But I didn't buy it. I bought it knowing that it wasn't going to be a high-end felt, right? I appreciate the history of why this hat's so important, and a hat like Adam hats, those two brands, why they were so important is because they got hats into the hands of people that otherwise couldn't afford a hat, right? They just wanted to have a fine hat on their head. And John Kavanagh, and his infinite wisdom, was able to realize the importance of that for his business and his brand. And he kind of said, okay, Champ hats exist. I'm going to buy that, and I'm going to make it the Chevrolet of my lineup. So I got to respect that. Anyway, business evolution and consolidation. Acquisition by Hat Corporation of America. So in the 1950s, Champ hats, along with other brands like Kavanagh, Knox, Dobbs, became part of the Hat Corporation of America, a major consolidator in the hat industry, through a purchase by the Selesky brothers. Shout out to the Selesky brothers. I don't know a lot of their history, but that's something that I learned via this Chat GPT. Further transitions. Later in the 1960s, the company was absorbed by Resistol under the Hatco umbrella. Remember, I teased that earlier. I will get into Resistol and I obviously Hatco, but I don't want to do that now because, one, I'm going to run out of time, and two, I want to research it a little bit more. I do own a couple Resistols, very great brand, something I think that shares some history with Stetson. But I won't like steal my own thunder there any more than I already have. That will come up sometime maybe in the near future. Anyway, the company was absorbed by Resistol under Hatco umbrella. By the early 1970s, even further consolidation occurred, including mergers with brands like Stetson. Well, there you go. So that's all you're gonna get on that. I won't say anymore because I will do that research for another show. Anyway, trademark activity. Champ hats incorporated, labeled several product lines and finishes such as Featherweight Champ, Kasmir, like we just showed you the Kasmir, Pinup Champ, Golf Champ, Spaceweight, and Rugged Man, right? Like you can see like the idea of why the marketing behind some of this, right? Obviously, around that time, we became infatuated with space, right? Golf maybe was a thing that he positioned for people that like wanted to wear a fine hat on the golf course. Featherweight for those folks that were weighed down, like, you know what I mean? Like this guy had an angle for everything. Pinup Champ, I don't know. I just know about pinup girls, but maybe pinup was like something for like having to deal with women. I don't know. Maybe I'm like I just exposed my dirty mind here. But he had something called the Pinup Champ. I can only think of like pinup girl when I hear Pinup Champ, but also the Rugged Man, right? Oh man, he had like maybe I don't know what the Rugged Man was dealing with, but you already know he was going for that masculine. Like this is that guy that's gonna punch you out, or you better not mess with this guy. So if you want their Champ Rugged Man, right? Remember, this is for the working man, right? Champ was there for the rugged man, that masculine man, that working man. That only has $750 for a hat in the 40s and 50s. And he trademarked these things. It's brilliant. It's brilliant marketing. Like, even if you hate hats, you got to love the marketing genius that was John Kavanaugh. Anyway, he had trademarks filed between 1949 and 1965, and I already told you about like him and his trademarks, right? Like I said, he did it. He was very shrewd, right? But not only did he take out trademarks and file patents, he enforced it. So regardless of what that did for his peers, he enforced it. Anyway, common styles and collectability, typical design. Most champ hats were fedoras with notable variations as the Kasmir Finish, a velvety smooth felt. Okay, so maybe Kasmir was about the felt. Okay, I just learned something. See, we both learned something. I thought it was the band, right? I thought the Kasmir Finish had something to do with the sweatband because, well, you only found it on the sweatband, but it looks like it, according to this, again, I don't know. This is being taken from two sources. One, the Vintage Haberdasher's blog, and two, BernardHats.com. Shout out to BernardHats.com. But apparently, according to this, it was not the sweatband. It was the finish of the felt. Okay, that to be determined, I guess, in a future episode if I do that research. Anyway, they also offered some Western style and straw hats under the Champ Western line. There you go. Again, John Kavanaugh did not want to leave a stone unturned. He wanted to make a hat for everybody. Like I said, that's kind of how my channel is. That's why I feel such a kinship to this man, even though he might have been a jerk. So anyway, still shout out to John Kavanaugh, his jerk ways. He was still a brilliant businessman. Collector insights from hat collectors and enthusiasts on forums like the Fedora Lounge. Shout out to the Fedora Lounge and my Fedora Lounge lizards. Champ hats, ... were a mid-grade hat that was priced right for the masses, was one quote. Champ, another quote says, Champ was originally from Sunbury, PA, ... They had celebrities advertising for them like Guy Williams in the 1950s. Shout out to Guy Williams. If you're not familiar with the actor Guy Williams, you might remember him from the 50s when he did shows like he played Zorro, right? He was a very tall, handsome man, also a New Yorker. And I think he passed away in 1989 or the late 80s. And I think he passed away in Argentina. But he was like one of those leading men, right? Those suave leading men type individuals. And he played smooth talking Zorro in the Zorro show from the 50s and 60s. And then he went on to play Mr. Robinson from the TV show Lost in Space. So obviously he was a very recognizable guy. He'd probably be akin to like the Heineken man right now, right? He's like, stay thirsty, my friend, right? That's where kind of I borrowed the stay hatting, my friend. So shout out to the Heineken man, the most interesting man in the world. Again, we get inspiration from a lot of things, and I can't help it. I'm somebody that observes, and I get influenced by the things that I watch and I observe around me. So shout out to the Heineken man. Shout out to Guy Williams, the late great Guy Williams, who actually was of Sicilian origin. I believe that's he had a Spanish, Catalan, and Sicilian origin, his ancestry, and I grew up as a New Yorker and became famous in the 50s for Zorro. And he did a bunch of other movies. I can't rattle them all off, but everybody knows Zorro, I think, and Lost in Space. Check those out if you're interested in that kind of stuff. But somebody else said on the Fedora Lounge, not a whole lot of people collect Champs hats either. So the field of collecting them is more open to the beginner. I say that quote and I read that quote, and that's not lost on me. This is one of the reasons why I profile this hat, right? I happen to think that this is one of those brands where you could still get, especially, a vintage brand. You can't buy this new anymore, as far as I know. But if you're new to collecting and you want to, let's say you are somebody that has a lot of expensive hats and you're like, I'd buy more hats, but I can't buy any more like really high priced hats. Champ and Adam hats just happen to be very plentiful and very accessible to the budding vintage hat nerd, or the hat nerd that has a collection that has holes in it, right? We talk about having a collector theme. If you're not somebody that owns a Champ hats, Ian owns Adam hats, Ian, like I said, I don't know why you own an Adam hat. Maybe one day you can talk about that. But I know a lot of people like me own Adam hats and they own a champ hat. We got into it because we like the mystique around the hat for the masses, right? Just like there was Dunlap and Kavanaugh and Stetson and Mallory for the well-to-do. There was Adam hats and champs for the everyday man, right? You gotta love that. Even if it's just for the marketing itself, the marketing genius behind marketing to the everyday man, right? It's like everybody has dollars that I want, right? Like if you're like a capitalist, you're like, there's dollars that everybody has that I want, right? I want, Kavanaugh collected dollars, right? And I'm sure Stetson was the same. And I'm like, when you're a shrewd man like that, like kind of like Warren Buffett that also collected dollars, lots of them, billions of them. And the way you do that is not by alienating people. You do that by welcoming them and saying, you know what, we have a hat for you. Like, what's your budget? We got a hat for you. That's just genius, and that's not just genius. It's just basically the way business is done, right? Like if you look at your business line now, they usually like the rule of three, right? That I like to like always harken back to. You have the high end, the middle line, and then the low end line, right? The entry level, right? We don't call them low end, we call it entry level. The entry level, and if the idea is that these brands, you become aspirational, right? So John Kavanaugh recognized that, being the genius that he was, he recognized that hat wearers, just like a lot of people, they're aspirational, right? So when you start off your business and you can't afford a Dunlap or a Kavanaugh or a Stetson, but I'm going to do that now. I'm going to save money, maybe reinvest it in my business, and then I'm going to buy one. Maybe I'll buy a Dobbs next, and maybe ultimately I'll buy that Stetson, or I'll buy that Kavanaugh, or I'll buy that Dunlap, or that Knox, whatever it is that's the next rung up. And that's how we are in life, right? Our collections are a reflection of ourselves, in that we don't like staying stagnant, right? The most fun, like if you want to like stop having fun in life, you should stay stagnant, right? Because there's no fun in stagnation, right? It's kind of like stagflation, right? Stagflation, like you may not know what stagflation is, but you know it's bad, right? No, you don't use the term stag. I'm sure that some people love stag parties, but whatever. Just like you don't want to stay stagnant, you don't want stagflation. You don't want to stay stagnant in your collection. You don't want to stay stagnant in your life and in your development, right? One of my favorite quotes is attributed to Ernest Hemingway, and before that, Seneca, the great Roman thinker. And it's something hopefully I won't butcher it. It says, there's no nobility in being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is being greater or better than your former self. And I'm sure I butchered that, but I think that's one of the most powerful sayings. And it's kind of how I live my life, right? I'm not here to compete with you guys. Like if you have 80 hats, I'm not here to get 81 hats, right? I'm here to say, oh my gosh, I totally respect your 81 hats, or your 80 hats. If you only have one hat, I'm here to say, hey, I totally respect your one hat, and the fact that you wouldn't dream of owning more than one hat because you found the hat and it's the hat you love, right? Like I'm here to kind of like be better than I was yesterday. Like my hat collection hopefully is better than it was yesterday, even if that means I got rid of a hat, right? Sometimes it's kind of addition by subtraction, right? I rehome hats from somebody else, and I rehome them to another home. Sometimes when I sell or I give them away, and everything has a purpose, right? And I do that because I don't want to stay stagnant in this. Just like I don't want to stop learning. I don't want to stay stagnant in my hat collection in my life, and that's why I travel. So hopefully I'll travel to a place near you. So yeah, just a little summary table for those that want to kind of get a timeline. This is one of the neat things that many neat things that ChatGPT does. And I think I said everything I really want to say about Champ. So that way, if you don't have a chance to read this, you can pause this on your screen. That way, you can read it at your leisure. That was Let me see if I could just do that. Yeah. Hey, I'm getting better at this. Yeah, that was everything about this hat, everything about Champ the brand that I knew. Again, you guys already heard, if you've been rocking with this channel, you've already heard about the Hat Corporation of America. You know, I profiled Dunlap and Kavanaugh, which are at the very high end. I've also done Dobbs. Have I done Knox yet? I don't think I've done Knox yet, but I will. I own Knox. Great brands. You know, hey, Paul has to leave. Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Paul. And I'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, I'm looking forward to our stream tomorrow, Paul. And like I said, if there's anything that you need from me, you always know how to get a hold of me. Paul will be on here tomorrow. Shout out to Paul. Thanks for hanging out with us. You know, we will see Paul. We'll have back Paul tomorrow, Lord willing, and he can share what he has, more of his knowledge with us. Thank you, Paul. Have a great day, my friend. Essentially, that was it. I think I think I'm gonna wrap this up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. If you didn't, well, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, you know. That was Hat Chat number 21. Wow, I feel like I accomplished something. And then thanks to you guys for accomplishing that with me. You know, there's more to come. I'm gonna have some more great guests. We got Paul coming on tomorrow to talk about hat stitching and that general process. Remember, Paul is a hatter. He's somebody that is an expert in restoring hats, and he's now a full-blown bespoke hat maker over in the UK. So yeah, definitely hit up his channel. You can see him on my channel whenever he has the time to come and hang out with us. Always appreciated, and you guys are welcome too. So you know, like I said, the only thing I'm gonna kind of say here, like I'll put you know, I'll put this here. Help grow the channel. Like I said, if you already subscribed and you already like the videos, thank you for doing so. Obviously, if you haven't done so, you're welcome to do that. Only if you want to. Like I said, you know, if you don't want to support the channel in that respect, I respect it. Even if you just watch the channel and you don't ever participate, you're more than welcome. I really do appreciate it. You know, it's one of those you know, oh yeah, okay, yeah. Ian says thank you to Paul, and I can't wait for tomorrow. Hey, Ian, thank you so much for hanging out with us every single time. I know you're a busy man. Ian is a musician. And Ian plays neo folk music. You know, I love my musician, especially my musician hat nerds, right? Just like Kevin Todd Gerber on Hats and Guitars. I feel like that's definitely a overlap. Those are two passions. We talked about all the various passions that people have in the hobbies that overlap. Hats and music, I know, go together. I mean, who doesn't love music, right? If you don't love music, you're probably not human, to be honest. I mean, I hope I'm not being insulting in that respect, but I just feel just like food, you know, saying you like food and you like music is kind of like, yeah, of course you do, duh. Who doesn't like that, right? Everybody eats and everybody, I think, listens to music in some way, regardless of what kind of music you like. Anyway, wow, that is it. I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. Like I said, like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. If you already did that, then please, I accept my sincere thanks. You know, you can always share this with somebody else you think might appreciate it. But if you do none of that, if you do none of those things, the only thing I will ask you, right, is regardless of how you feel about me and how you feel about this channel and all of that, right? If you could just do me one favor, stay hatting, my friend. Have a great day. Ciao, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for rocking with me. Bye.